I think for many Elvis vinyl collectors, the 1950s is probably the most exciting era. And certainly that's true for Japan because the records didn't really sell very well here, for one thing. And of course, as a lot of collectors know, there are a lot of unique releases, records that are unique to Japan, which came out in the 1950s. So what I want to do in this video is look at the 11 LPs that came out and look at them in reverse rarity order, starting with the most common and then going through to the rarest of the lot. Now, unfortunately, I don't have all of them, but I've got most of them. And I'm going to be basing the video on information which I have written down over the last 3 years or so in these notebooks here. So these are notebooks I started to keep, as I said, about 3 years ago. And in these books, I basically note down all the information that you can find in the run-out areas of Elvis's Japanese records. The reason I do that is because you can find the date codes in there, so it's possible to tell when each record was released. So if I can just give you an example, showing you my notes here. Now this is my page or pages from Elvis's Golden Records stereo. I think it's the original one. Yeah, so this is the 1963 release, Elvis's Golden Records on Victor. So you can see over the past few years I've had quite a lot of copies of that have come in. These are all on Victor. And yeah, what's that? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, about 12 different copies I've seen over the past few years, ranging from the earliest one in 1963 right up until August 1970. But let's get back to the 50s. So the most common 1950s LP, I would say, is this one here. LS 5048, Loving You, originally released in January 1958. So I've seen 9 copies of that. I've made notes on 9 different copies that I've seen over the past few years. However, only 3 copies were from the 1950s. May 58, February 59, which is that one there, and July 59. So I haven't even seen an original pressing from January 58 in the last few years. The other copies were from June 1960, May, July, August 61, and I've seen 2 copies of a pressing from February 1962 with exactly the same information in the run-out areas. So it's interesting that although it's a 50s release, most of the copies that I've seen are actually from the 1960s. But anyway, that one I would say is definitely the most common album from the 50s. The next 2 albums are tied in 9th place, the first of which is King Creole, LS 5086, which came out originally in October 1958. This is actually a 1960s, early 1960s pressing, 1962. So I've seen 8 copies of that album in the past few years, and this time I've seen 4 from the 50s and 4 from the 60s. I've seen 1 original, one from December 58, another one from December 58 but with different stampers, one from January 59, and then I've also seen copies from January 1960, October 60, May 61 and February 62. So yeah, that one would be the next one, and I would say about the same level of rarity as that one is a Japan only compilation called Elvis's Golden Records Volume 2. This one came out in March 1959, and this was the first Elvis album in Japan to be released with an obi. So that's a fairly early copy. Again, I've seen 8 copies of this album in the past few years. I've seen, what have I seen? 3 originals. I've seen 1 from November 59 and then 4 from the 1960s, February and October 1960, May 61 and April 1962. If you've noticed that these dates that I'm giving you stop at 1962, that's because it was at that point that Victor reissued a lot of Elvis's 50s albums in stereo, like the second album and Golden Records and so on. In 8th spot, we have the last 1950s album to come out in Japan. It's A Date with Elvis, LS 5162. This one came out in November 1959. I've seen 4 copies of this album. in the past few years, 2 of which were from the 50s and 2 are from the early 60s. Yeah, I've seen 2 original copies, one from February 1960 and that one there is from August 1960. In 7th place, and this might surprise a lot of people, is Elvis's Golden Records. This one came out in March 1959, which is quite late, and I did a video on that particular album and why it was released so late in Japan. And it's a surprisingly hard LP to find, the original copy of LS5119. You're far more likely to find a copy of this one, if you find any, SHP 5067, a stereo LP which came out in 1962 originally. There's also a mono 60s one with an RA catalogue number, but even this is much more common even than the mono reissue. So I've only seen 3 copies of Golden Records LS5119 in the past 3 years or so. No originals from March 59. I've seen one from July 59, one from October 60, and one from November 61. So once again, you see that one stopping short of spring 1962 when the album was reissued in stereo. Then in 5th place, certainly a rare album, but not the rarest, is the Christmas album, originally released in November 57. I've only seen a couple of copies of this in the past few years. One is an original, and I've also seen one from November 59. And also in 5th place, equal 5th rarest album in Japan is, perhaps this one also might surprise you, it's Elvis's 2nd album, LS 5010. This was the first album to be released on 12-inch LP in Japan, which came out in February 1957. Surprisingly rare album. I've only seen a couple of copies of this one. This one is an original, and I've also, actually no, is this an original? Yeah, it is. And I've also seen one from August 1961. In at number 4 is one that I can't show you, unfortunately, but I can show you what it looks like. It's an album called Rock, Elvis Rock. This one came out in July 58, and it's actually a various artists album, various artists compilation. It includes no fewer than 9 Elvis songs, so it's mostly Elvis. But this is a really hard album to find, with the Golden Records front cover. It's even got the blue lettering on the title there, Rock, Elvis Rock. Now, I haven't had any copies of that album in my possession over the past 3 years, but a friend of mine, he's actually got 2 copies of it, one of which is the original, and he's also got a copy from 59. So I'm going to say that I've seen a couple of copies of that in the past few years. The 3rd rarest Elvis album from the 1950s is his very first album from August 1956, Elvis Presley, or in Japanese it's called Elvis Presley Style, LS538. This is the only copy that I've had in the last 3 years. In fact, it's the only copy I've ever had. And this one is actually not even from the 50s. It's from February 1960, so one of the very final copies of this album to be made. Because the following year, 1961, they reissued the album with a different catalogue number, and they also changed the colouring on the front cover. So Elvis is in green and Presley is in pink on the reissue. So that was a 10-inch LP, and number 2 is also a 10-inch LP. Sadly, I don't have a copy of this in my possession. In fact, I don't think I've ever had a copy of this. Copies of it do come up for sale every now and again, but they are really, really expensive. We're looking at the left side there, Love Me Tender, which is LS548 from February 1957. It contains the Love Me Tender soundtrack plus 4 other songs as well. On the right side there, you can see a Japanese reissue from a few years ago, 2006, the reissue came out. And you may be familiar with it because it's been reissued in Europe, I think, recently on a coloured vinyl 10-inch LP. But the originals are really, really hard to find. And what I would say is the rarest Elvis LP from Japan in the 1950s is another 10-inch LP. Again, I can't show it to you because I've never owned a copy of it. You're looking on the left side there. It's an album called Top 10. It's another various artists compilation. It only has 3 Elvis songs on it, which were Lonesome Cowboy, All Shook Up, and Too Much. There's also an orchestral version of Love Me Tender on there as well. So the reason why I put top 10 at number 1 rather than Love Me Tender is, again, I haven't seen a copy. In fact, I've never had a copy of that album, but it just doesn't come up for sale quite as often as the Love Me Tender 10-inch. So that's why I would rank that as number 1, the rarest LP in Japan. So how many of these have you got? Has anybody out there got all 11 of them? And if you have, just check the run-out areas. You might find that you don't have as many 50s LPs as you thought, because as I've shown here, a lot of them appear to be 50s albums, but in fact they're early 60s pressings. Finally, I would like to draw your attention one last time to these 2 books that I and Atsushi Nakamura have written. FTD World 1999 to 2025. You can get these from our website. I'll leave details in the description below. The closing date to pre-order these is November the 20th. So by the time this video comes out, there'll just be a few days left to get them pre-ordered. Every single FTD release is in here, all the way from Burbank 68 right the way up to the making of GI Blues, which you've probably just recently found out about. They're all in here. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. If you have any questions about the Japanese releases or the books, feel free to drop me a comment, but I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Cheers.